welcome. Welcome to this continuation of fan club, in a way, or Simply Settle, a pith instruction from Patrul Rinpoche that he gives in a meditation often translated as the self-liberating meditation. And maybe for today, for a change, I won't go into all the disclaimers. I've said them before. And instead, we'll just simply outline the exploration that we've embarked on together, and that, in a way, I've more fully come to see how those words simply settle so maybe especially resonated for me and connected for me in my own experience and from my own learning, especially from Master Wancho Park, where he always starts with things that are very immediate and tangible and in a way universal. So Master Park is also a physicist, and that's why whatever I do, whatever I share, it's connected to that sense that we are already this flow of nature. And that includes our physicality, that our physical presence has these qualities, and that those physical aspects of our being, they can provide us with gateways that can be more immediate in the understanding and more immediate in the feeling. And so we started with that that most obvious just straight up simply settle of the physicality of laying down the burden of a weight to support, and even how much in that we can let go of the illusion of having to do something, having to hold ourselves up by ourselves. So much of it comes down to the illusion of separation, and instead settle directly into the mutual flow of this interaction. And so that became our other angle, where we can see this as this laying down to this, but we can also see it as this interaction is a mutual flow of action, reaction, both sides inseparable, one event. And instead of more seeming the illusion of separation, we can lay down, simply settle into the Tao, into the way nature is already going on, always going on, into mutual flow. And if we can directly settle right into the nature of mutual flow, then we can directly settle into other universal qualities of nature so far as we know, such as the wholeness of all this flow unfolding all together. And last time we felt that with a sense of simply settling into the wholeness of space, one whole space. That includes things we can settle into, like the space between our fingers. We can even settle directly into the free flow of nature, where this togetherness of nature, however it may seem, it doesn't, the more we explore it, it doesn't come in fixed chunks, where we can find a finer flow within any flow in this kind of fractal like opening of inner freedom, where even in a sensation like air coming in and out of our nose, there's this practically limitless fineness to that flow. And that goes for any flow of nature that we know of and that we might encounter in our experience, always with the caveat of so far as we know. And that fineness of flow, nature's flow, which gives rise through the mutual interaction of everything to the wholeness. So they're not compartmentalized, but especially that fineness of flow is what can help us experientially feel that even subtle experiences that we have, subtle aspects of our experience, might not be fundamentally so different from that flow of the air at our nose, fineness of it, the togetherness of it, the underlying nature of it. And what's so really amazing as sentient being, a human being, is that the flows that make up us, the flows that help give rise to our own unique experiences and feelings and perceptions, and even mental activity, mind, that there's flows that are unfolding all together in nature and in this fine, free, yet together way that carry content and yet are also at the same time uh, a pure flow of nature. And so I intentionally came out here uh, for today's session because I've heard that many of you can even hear the cicadas and crickets that are in the trees all around here. And before embarking on some of our arisings of mind, which we'll begin to explore next week. Well, that's totally not a good. We have, in a way, been exploring arisings of mind all along. Because when we simply settle, even when we simply settle our body upon the ground, it's that experience, the perception of that, the awareness of that cannot be can can't be separated out, put over there. But as a stepping stone, and can take this lightly, like when I was a kid, I'd love to play in a creek and just, you just would hop from stone to stone. So we're in this, there's this amazing stream, creek, nature around us, and we're exploring it stone by stone, hopping along, seeing what's the next easiest way we can make a bit of a leap. And so the bit of a leap that we'll be embarking on today will be, what is it like to simply settle directly into perception? And we'll start with sound. Maybe you have some sounds of nature around you, or you can borrow my sounds. Where we're less, oh my goodness. So you all okay? So a wind carried my little extra lamp, which was not doing me much good, into my camera. Let me just check the settings and everything. You guys are there. You're still with me. You still have your sense of humor. All right. Let me see if I can make this a little less precarious. We do have a breeze that comes through. So as I reset this, you're welcome to get your own soundscape, maybe open a window. So, yeah. So you may have noticed that shit happens. And sometimes, oh, it's going to happen again. I'm going to just put that inside. You're not being helpful. So this is where the words echo in they just echo in me. Simply settle into whatever is arising. And I think sometimes with mindfulness and acceptance practice, like what is it for me to simply settle into the fact that my lamp kept on falling over and disrupting our precious time together? And it can be that sense of it at the level of content. Oh, that's happening. I'm going to accept that that's happening. I'm going to feel what that brings up in me. Be okay with whatever is arising. And that's not quite what it's not quite what helps me the most to work with the content. Sometimes what feels most helpful is to feel how whatever the content of perception, there's that underlying togetherness, flow of nature. And I get to settle directly into that underlying nature that is not separate from the content and yet is unconditional no matter what the content and no matter what I feel about the content. And so we can see what this might be like. First, starting with sounds, maybe a little bit of sight. Certainly, body sensations is already something that we've been practicing our perception of, where it's less about the particular content of what our body is feeling, and we're more feeling into that, say, that mutual flow quality, that whole flow quality, that free flow quality, which carries with it that uniqueness of experience and also gives us a feeling of that kind of support of just the way nature always is, that we get to simply settle into that, even in the very unfolding of our perception. So, so here we go. And with this setup, it's a little harder for me to lie down for the first part. And If you are in a space where it works for you to just lie down, I would so encourage you to just lie flat, just to give that fuller signal of getting to let things be as they are without a special effort on our part. And so as we begin, you may like to start with eyes closed. May like to play with that seeming paradox that all the support, more support probably than we've ever felt before, is already coming from the ground. It's already there. It's already the way nature is going on. There's nothing we can do to make that support more or less. At the same time, we might be able to just let go a little more fully into that support and recognize that it's there, that we weren't recognizing before. And that it can feel like a practice to simply settle directly into the fullness of that support that's there. And let ourselves abide in that experience of mutual togetherness, mutual flow, body and earth. And gradually, as we talked about last time, the practice can become where whatever arises can simply settle and abide in the flow of nature of that arising. And we'll go through the foundations like usual. I'm just recognizing for myself that earlier, not long ago, I learned a dear friend has cancer, and most likely all's gonna be fine. That's just catching up with me here in real time. And if you happen to find that something is becoming present for you, arising for you, to allow space for it, and maybe just even reassure yourself, whatever is coming up for you, that this too is a flow of nature. And this too is something that we can come to settle, simply settle directly into. Truly nothing is excluded. Nothing is unwelcomed. Nothing is a distraction. And that we are going along, leaping from stone to stone in this exploration. And we might not have, in our own experience or for this particular aspect, made the leap yet of how to simply settle directly into this too. So, with that overall gentleness with ourselves and with all of experience, just letting ourselves now feel our hands resting, our hands simply laying down their weight into support. Letting the hands receive the fullness of that support. Letting your awareness recognize the togetherness of mutual flow. It needs nothing on our part. And with that sense of the togetherness at the back of our hands, if they're resting that way, sensing the togetherness at the palms of our hands with the air that they touch, and slightly spreading all the fingers, feeling how the air and the space wraps around, envelops all of our fingers, from the palm of our hand to our fingertips, each and every one. And how that enveloping space around our hands helps to highlight the space that our hands take up within that fuller space. Within this one whole space. Maybe letting that sense of the space extend from the very center of your hand to the ceiling, along the ceiling to the edges of the wall. You feel your hands and their space, the space around them, and the space of the entire room, all at once. And we simply settle directly into the wholeness of one whole space. Maybe you'd even like to open that sense of the one whole space as far as you would like. The atmosphere beyond, as far as you would like, in this one whole space. Now, and maybe letting that wide open one whole space include the space inside your nose, and feel the flow of air there. That itself is part of the entire atmosphere. We make a little more space on the inside, and it's this whole blanket of air that helps the air nearby rush in to the inside of us. And even the support from the earth is helping us to gently push that air back out into that blanket of the atmosphere. And maybe letting yourself keep that wide open, vast sense of what's going on, even as you allow yourself also to open to the inner vastness, the inner freedom, the practically infinite fineness of flow right at your nose. There's a vastness to the big, and there's a vastness to the small, the so fine and free, flows within ever flows, that it's almost like we free fall into them without landing on a limit, a grain size. And in a way, that's how we simply settle into the fine, free flow of nature. We can settle directly into an experience without it going thunk, without it becoming graspable. But in a way, it becomes ever more finely palpable. And we can approach this extension to other senses, first from a kind of intellectual understanding that can give us some reassurance, some direction. Because right now we're feeling the flow of air inside our nose, and we have a certain sensation with that. And in a way, hearing is a sense that allows us to perceive very, very fine flows of air in our ears. We usually call sounds. So, what if the experience itself of hearing is not so different from this free falling into the fineness of nature's flow? And begin to hear, begin to listen. Where there is the content of the sounds, We recognize this sound or that sound. Let the soundscape surround you in every direction. Let it fill the 3D space all around you. And where would we go to simply settle directly into perceiving of sound? And I'll say right up front, that's a trick question. Where would we go? In his instructions, Patrul Rinpoche speaks of not seeking outside, and not turning inward to look either. Wherever we go, wherever we are, in experience of sound, soundscape seemingly outside, ears, hearing, mind seemingly inside. All this fine free flow of nature arising as an inseparable experience of sound. And what would it be like to settle directly into all, each and every flow of nature that gives rise to all these sounds surrounding us, within us, both Perhaps seeing what it might feel like to simply settle into the silence and the space and the sounds. We feel like we can bathe in them, bask in the flowing all together experience of them. Nothing to grasp in any particular location. Nothing to find and get. Just the way that this experience of sound in space and silence arises all together. And how the sounds are ever different, ever changing. And there's this possibility of abiding in the very nature of sound, in each arising. And if you would like and you were lying down before, like to come very gradually into sitting. And just hear your soundscape as you're sitting. And this can be a nice moment to remind ourselves that the mutual flow of our body, contactful and immediate, still goes on and helps ground us as we feel into finer flows of nature. Perhaps again, just slightly spreading the fingers and letting yourself feel each fingertip. In a way, almost let yourself hear each fingertip. In a way, almost let yourself breathe in and out through each and every fingertip. Until perhaps those seemingly solid and clunky hands reveal themselves to be also filled with this fineness of nature's flow that includes the sensations that let us know we have fingers and that they're there where they are in our bodyscape. Our bodyscape, our soundscape, all these fine free flows arising together, full of content, and also freely flowing just as they are. Even as they may carry those messages of content, perception. And now letting ourselves begin to include another channel of experience by seeing that the inside of our eyelids are not as dark as we think they are. The light is still coming to us. So that even before we open our eyes, we can have that sense that the space of the room is filled with light. This very fine, very free flow of nature that connects us through the reflected light, the visual scape, the landscape around us. Now gently opening the eyes. And don't even see. It's just this appearance of a landscape in three-dimensional space with colors, objects, depth and width and height. And what might it be like to directly settle into this visual landscape? Into this light-filled room. That is also an image in our awareness. That is all a very, very exquisitely fine flow of nature happening all at once. Where maybe this sense of seeing doesn't feel like it competes with hearing. or with feeling. With them all sharing the underlying togetherness and free flow. That we get to simply settle into everywhere and nowhere in particular. Into every aspect of sensory experience. Whatever the content. Perhaps finding ourselves in this ocean of free flow. Beyond any limit of beyond any limit. And maybe finding that whatever experience arises can be experienced as part of that ocean of free flow. So, if anything did come up for you today, that seemed to be not part of the practice or hard to know what to do with it, maybe here at the end, just see. See if it too can be experienced a little more like this ocean of free flow. That includes all of our experience. And as we close here in this exploration for this time, Patrul Rinpoche says, or is translated as saying, and this makes it all very simple and easy. And my feeling at this moment is that's something for an enlightened Rinpoche to say. And again, I don't claim at all to know what he was pointing at with that instruction. I'm not trained in that tradition. I am far, far, far away from any special lasting state of enlightenment. And as I often share with you all, this is how I practice, and this is some of what I most need. And I didn't even realize it. I really needed it here today. Master Park said the other day to a student who was grieving the loss of his wife, the death of his wife, after decades and decades and decades of marriage. And the world is heartbreaking. And there is an unconditional kind of comfort that instead of trying to seek something to comfort us, we begin more to turn to this nature of everything, including perception itself, whatever its content, as more this underlying source of solace and a kind of support that it can seem more ephemeral in a way than just your body laying down on the ground. Yet when we come to feel that there is that nature of everything without exception, it can be in a way an even more robust, all embracing kind of support. that we simply settle into, since it's already going on and not up to us. And that is it. So I'll be quiet here for just a minute or two and have some space to reflect on your own experience. And would so love to hear your comments, your questions, what this was like for you. For this, I'll have to pop inside. Thank you all for your support through the blowing winds. And hi, y'all. Hi, Swiss, R, Vagabond, David. Miss Rhonda. Believe you might be first time here. Welcome. Vagabond, sorry to clonk you on your head. You're still here. Annette, welcome back. I think I saw Martha and Matt and Andrew. Welcome back. JB, good to see you. While you might be reflecting on your experience, and it does help everyone if you share what this was like for you. If you have a question, likely someone else has a question. Charlotte, hey. And I put in the comments, Samaneri JSR is, she has right here on Insight Timer, she has a reading of Patrul Rinpoche's self-liberating meditation, and highly recommend going to the source and listening to her embodied reading of it. Probably next time we will, in a way, begin to at least overlap somewhat. Again, no claims, but begin to overlap somewhat with the level that I should say the application And the application of applying this to awareness, to mind, to whatever occurs in the mind. And just like it's helpful to begin with, uh, you know, can be helpful to begin with laying down to the support of the ground, the earth. Today we took that stepping stone of what it would be like to lay down to perception, process of perception, whatever the perception is. See some comments coming in. David says, I didn't have anything blowing here, only some mental cobwebs. Uh, blow out the mental cobwebs. Emily, I wrote down something you said in the beginning about finding the flow within the flow in this fractal like opening of inner freedom. Yeah. And later you talked about how we can free fall into this without ever hitting bottom. Yet this is how we can simply settle into the free flow of nature. That was beautiful and resonated deeply for me. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I think sometimes it's like, well, if I'm simply settling into something, right? I need to land. And actually part of really getting into the extended analogy of what it's like to lay down to the ground of reality is that there's aspects of the way of nature that don't resolve into something fixed and limited. It's like that fractal like flows within ever finer flows, and that it can feel like a free fall, but it's like there's no thunk. And so it's a very freeing kind of free fall. It actually begins to feel very held and safe because we're neither trying to grasp on something nor are we limiting our perception. So it's simply settling into the free flow of nature itself. And that involves not finding a limit. So sometimes things that seem to be a paradox actually makes sense. JB, I have difficulty understanding flow and the fineness of flow. Are you able to clarify more what you mean by these terms a bit more? Or maybe I need to do a more introductory session on this to understand better. Yeah. Hmm. Well, for sure, a starting place can be. I have I think it's the second one on the free tracks on my profile. Will introduce that sense of how the flow of nature, yes, we can sometimes be like, oh, that forms that object, or that is this size. Like you think of the size of grains of sand on the beach. Then, if you even think of the particles that make up the grains of sand on the beach, you're like, well, wait a second, but they're all kind of stuck together. Why are you talking about like a free flow of it? You can even just bring to mind the way a tuning fork vibrates. So even something that's ramrod straight and a metal all stuck together It has this wave-like property that helps to reveal how it is comprised, and it does flow. It's comprised of these finer flows, and it does flow. And a lot of times, even though this is a way of nature that is even in a metal tuning fork, we often practice feeling it first in the air itself, since the air is kind of more evidently uh, very free flowing and doesn't come with a limit of how finely we can feel, such as the free flow of air at the nose, going in, going out. So going back to like the fractal like analogy, in terms of our perception as well as our overall understanding from physics, it's like whatever we perceive as that's it. That's that's the that's all she wrote. You know, that's all that's the final uh size of perception. That if we actually open a little bit more, what can be revealed is that there's finer flows, finer parts that are made, uh, that are actually making up what we thought was the final one. And this can go all the way down to the finest particles that we know of, and we still don't know if we've hit rock bottom. Just even more directly, there's a sense of the freedom of things connected but not braced, together but not clunky. Always this freedom of connection that comes from this nearest neighbor level of interaction that can be practically infinite in its fineness. And if you would like an even more further description of them, you're welcome to take a look at Master Wanchul's Park's book, Now Flow, Breath, Movement, Mind, and that will give you a further sense of all these now flow qualities, all these qualities of nature that we're talking about. JB, let me know if that helped point you in a direction that made that a little bit easier. And thank you for asking that. Um, David, I think, is seconding Emily's sense of the fractal. Yeah, two of you should connect. Emily, I saw clouds drifting and trees swaying in the breeze as nature's flow today. And I thought about myself as also part of that. Yeah. Why not? Why not? Why make such a big whopping exception for ourselves? We might as well just let ourselves be a flow of nature along with everything else. David, I found your tracks are fascinating and I'm looking at life differently now. Mm, thank you. And really, really wanting to say that this is the teachings of Master Wanchul Park coming through me in the way that I feel them as well. But definitely I'm 11 years in And it's always fascinating with Master Park. Emily, feeling the soft air flow through my nose helps me with connecting to feeling flow. Yeah. It's always a process of returning to the present moment. Yeah. Seconding David's comment. Thank you all. Yeah. And sometimes I just spend even, a good 20 minutes just feeling the breath at my nose and kind of free falling into that fineness. So just taking our time with this. JB, yes, thank you. Is part of the free flow of nature that we are in constant flow with it, that we are actually a flowing, ever changing being that intersects with a changing environment. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Maybe we don't even just intersect. Maybe we are, we are part of, and maybe even what we think of an inside and outside is more altogether than we can really fathom on an everyday level. But that essence of everything is flow. Master Park even calls the now flow, as in his view. Even and we have another book called Way of Now that goes into this, and our most recent book, Essential Reality and Time, goes into the physics of this, and even probably going to begin work on a metaphysics paper on process ontology around this. So if you'd like, I can geek out about this for sure. But it's the idea that it's not that there's things and things change, but that the changing is inherent in the being of things. And it actually doesn't make sense to separate out changing from what is. So now is now flow. Master Park sometimes says it's not now shape. Not now shape that then, changes to another now shape, but that the flow of change is inherent in each moment of being. And that's part of this worldview where we both simply settle, but we simply settle into something that's utterly dynamic. David's like, yeah, I'm all for geeking out anytime. Well, I'm going to have to think about that. You all let me know. Anyone else interested in process ontology and the nature of time? We can do a we can do a series on that, because for me it's not separate from the feelingfulness of it, from the practice of it, the understanding. It just helps. I think whether we realize it or not, we're all walking around with metaphysics in our head. Metaphysics as like this view of what is, of what is reality. Emily, yay, the Geek Club. All right. Well, seems like I've found my tribe here. Uh, it's less like, oh, we're gonna just think really hard and come up with what I think reality is and have opinions about it. And that's down for the Geek Club too, looks like, with the number of emojis. Um, But it's more like we're already walking around with a view of reality that is informing and probably significantly coloring our experience. And so, if we can invest a bit of time and thoughtfulness in clearing that metaphysics so that it is mm, simpler, clearer, uh, easier to live with, and maybe more aligned with the way things are happening. And that's kind of a win-win. David says, my particles appreciate this space. Yeah. The one thing that David, I would critique, right? So now we're in the geek club. So yeah, you're missing that. It sounds a bit like now shape. Your particles and you got the particles in the space, but you're missing the flow there. So you're the correction is my flowing particles in this space are appreciated. And so instead of using the word I think we'll all need to adapt that from now on out. Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, you all have been leading me on and guiding me what's next. So I think a little bit of Geek Club metaphysics is going to be heading your way. Maybe not next week, but the week after. So watch out what we're going to get into. Yeah. And appreciate you all, especially on a day like today. And a welcome to new folks. It's great to see you all connecting here. Awesome. Annette, tell me, what does FTW stand for? I'm not down on my so looking forward to the next episode here. For the win. I got it. Awesome. All right. Take care, all. Enjoy your free-flowing particles in space for now, with whatever is arising. Till next time.